Some retarded asshole in my comments was asking me a couple weeks ago, Smedgman King, why is it that in all your stories, the women is always ugly, or fat, and nasty, and stank? But the truth of the story is, without their makeup, most women are disgusting abominations. And as I was thinking about this stupid asshole's comment, it reminded me of a couple of times when I really, especially, ran afoul of some very, very ugly women. The first was back in the spring of 2005. I was coming out of the chow hall in Keesler Air Force Base, and as I'm getting ready to march back to my classes, I hear the sound of a woman crying. And I look over and I see this unfortunately ugly woman. She kind of looked like Thomas Jefferson with titties. And I said, unfortunately ugly woman, why is you crying? And she turns to me with a face that belongs on a nickel, and she said, boo-hoo-hoo, I failed a test. And they're making me retake the test. And frankly, I had things to do and places to be, but I know as well as any other man with a functioning set of testes, a crying woman who needs help is a surefire way to at least get a blowjob. So I gave her a little pep talk. Oh, it's no big deal. They're just making you retake the test because they just want to have you prove how good you are, because you know you're great and they know you're great, but they want you to put that greatness on a little piece of paper. And she was feeling good. I was feeling good. We both walked off to our separate classes, and I didn't think about it again for the rest of the day. I'd figured I'd run into her on the weekend, blow a load on her hideous face, which would be good for her because by having my cum on her face, it would kind of obscure her face so that other people wouldn't have to look at it quite as much. And that was going to be the end of it. But before the weekend came, I was on the night shift, guarding the woman's dormitory. And basically my job is to keep boys from creeping up from the second floor and going upstairs and raping bitches. And that night, like most nights, I'm sitting there with my chin on my fist and my elbow on my knee, looking like I'm awake, but really I'm half asleep, when I hear somebody on the second floor going into the recreation area and turning on the TV. And all I hear is, Inuyasha, Kagome, Inuyasha, Kagome. And I creep out of the staircase and I go to the rec room and I see the biggest, toughest black motherfucker on the entire base. He was about 6'12", 500 and 105 pounds, watching some girly ass faggoty anime with his hands in his pants. And if I didn't know any better from the motion he was performing, I would assume he was playing Yahtzee. And he's sitting at the edge of his seat like, oh my god, is this it? Will Inuyasha and Kagome finally be together? And from across the room I scream, I knew it! You gay motherfucker! You watch this gay shit! And he pops up out of his seat looking like King Kong about to take a shit. And he goes, oh shit, you saw nothing! You did not see this! I was trying to find the BET channel when the remote fell in my pants! And he runs off out of the room. And I'm sitting there trying to hold in my laughter, thinking of all the ways I'm gonna fuck with this guy the next day, when I hear somebody walk into the rec room behind me. And I turn around thinking it's gonna be that dude, but no. It was the woman from earlier in the day that I helped, and she's in her battle dress uniform, but she's got no undershirt on it, so her inadequate uncooked chicken breasts are kind of sticking out, but not really because she was just a nasty creature. And she walks up and she says, oh, I retook that test. And I thought of all the things you said to me, and I did so good, and I knew you'd be up here, guard, and I went out to the station, there was nobody there, and I heard you talking, I just had to come in. And I'm trying to tell her, hold on a second, bitch, you need to get the fuck up out of this room, because people can hear what happened in this room. We need to go downstairs to the first floor, where there's an empty room where I fuck fat bitches, and that's where we can do it. But as soon as I start talking, she gets it in her head that I'm turning her ugly ass down. And she gets very indignant, and she walks forward, and she grabs me by the dick. And she goes, if you do not fuck me right now, I'm gonna scream rape, and everyone's gonna come out, and you are gonna go to jail. And from the other side of the room, we hear somebody laugh. And we both look over to that big black ass motherfucker. He came back because he left a grape soda on the coffee table. And he's like, man, Smedgman King, I thought you could do better than that. I mean, I fuck ugly white women, but that's just cause I'm a broke ass nigga, and that's the best I can get. And she starts crying, and she runs out of the room and up the steps. And I'm just sitting there with this big ass, picking entire bales of cotton with each hand looking motherfucker. And, and he's laughing at me because I had an ugly woman. But I'm like, mine was real. She was three-dimensional. Yours is a fucking ugly ass cartoon. It's not even a good looking one. So we call the truth. I didn't tell his story He didn't tell mine, except for I did just now tell his story, so fuck that guy. He can't do anything about it. I told mine already. I win. And the second time I had a run-in with a really ugly woman, it didn't end quite as well as this one. This was sometime in the winter of 2008. It's my very first day of community college. And I have it in my head, oh, I'm gonna have so much fun and make all these friends and be around all these young, beautiful women. But I was at a community college. There wasn't a pretty looking woman in sight. And in my first day, my first class, a woman comes up to me and says, "Hey, is your name Edward?" Now, to be perfectly honest, that has got to be the stupidest fucking opening line I've heard in my entire life. But I realize, as you should realize, women are basically retarded animals you can have sex with, and she was not a particularly unattractive woman. She was a solid 6 out of 10. So I look at her, and with every ounce of restraint I have, I say, "No, my name is not Edward. My name is Smedgma. Nice to meet you." And so I'm chatting her up, and she's saying some weird shit like, "You know, I've noticed you have pointy canine teeth. You're almost like a vampire. Do you ever like to bite women or anything?" And I'm like, I guess I could bite you if that's what you're into, you fucking weird twisted bitch. And at the end of about 2 weeks, this girl comes up to me as I'm leaving class, and she's like, "Hey, my parents aren't home tonight," which is something that's always good to hear. And she said, "Why don't you come over and we'll study?" Well, to be perfectly honest, the Smedgma King is a straight A student. I came out of that college with a 3.8 GPA. I don't need to study, but I do like me some pussy. So I get in my car, I follow her off to her parents' house, and as we're walking through the house, we go in the front door, and I hear something moving around in the basement. I'm like, "You sure your parents aren't here?" And she's like, "Oh, that's probably my cat." And I go, "Okay," and we go up to the second floor, and I hear footsteps coming up from the basement. And I'm like, "I hear some footsteps. You sure your parents aren't here?" She's like, "Oh, that's probably my dog walking up. That's no big deal." And we get to her room, and I see on the wall she has posters of 2 pale hands reaching down and holding a red apple, and it says Twilight. And at that point, I had never heard of Twilight. I figured this stupid bitch just liked apples. So we're pretending like we're gonna study or something for about 15 minutes. But eventually I pull my dick out, and I start stabbing her with it. And again, I hear footsteps coming up from the first floor to the second floor. And at this point, I'm pretty sure we're not alone in the house, but I don't give a shit, because I got some chubby calves rubbing up against the side of my face. And just as I'm about to pull out and glaze her face with some man mayonnaise, I look at the door and I realize there are 3 sets of eyeballs watching me through a crack in the door. And I can hear this mouth breathing like... And as I'm going, "Ooh," this dumb bitch is going, "Oh, Edward!" And I hear whispering through the cracks in the door, as if people are going, "Ah, yes, Edward! Yes, Edward!" So I pull out, and I just completely ruined some teddy bear. She's probably got it when she was a baby from her dead grandma. And I fling it at the door, thinking this is her little sister's fucking around or something. And the teddy bear sticks to the wall, and as it begins to slide down, I hear people just running down the steps. And me, of course, having blown a load from my chode into her abode, I didn't really give a good goddamn. I thought everything was fine and dandy. Well, as it turns out, the next week at school, I get out of the class that I share with this girl, and I'm walking to my next class, when this ugly woman walks up. I mean, she looks like the anthropomorphization of raw sewage. Her name was Sellers. Usually I'm bad with names, but she looked like something that should be locked in a cellar. And she walks up to me, and she grabs my hand with both of her hands and says, "I'm ready." And I go, "What?" She goes, "I'm ready, Edward. Take me. Take me now. It's my turn." And I got the fuck on out of there. I didn't know what she was going on about. And a couple days later, I'm back on campus. I see Sellers and 2 other girls standing at the other side of a hallway, blocking the way to my next class. Now, frankly, I ain't one to let anybody push me around, let alone some ugly-ass woman who resembles a boiled orangutan. So I put my chest out, I suck in my gut, I push Sellers out of my way with my shoulders, and her 2 friends were just as ugly as she was, and they're going, "Edward, let's go. We talked about it and agreed to share, and it's our turn. And I'm like, what the fuck? And I turn around and I'm like, my name's not Edward, you crazy bitches. What the fuck do you want from me? And Sellers grabs me by the lapel on my shirt and goes, I know you're Edward. I saw what you did with that other girl that I blew a load in. And it dawns on me, they were the ones watching us from the doorway, and they think I'm this Edward guy too. So I squeeze past them and I get into class and I start asking around, who is this Edward guy? Is he like a vampire or something? And they let me know, apparently, Edward is a character from a series of novels written by a very ugly fat woman based on her wet dreams, who, if you read the physical description of him in that book, looked just like me. And the protagonist of the book is an ugly white woman with zero personality, with nothing special about her, but because she has special retard blood, all the vampires want to give her the old dip and sniff when she's on her period. Now, to be perfectly honest, if these girls were a little bit better looking, I'd have thrown them some loads. I'm not selfish, but they was the kind of uglies that would be like a character flaw in a Greek tragedy. And one day, I am sitting in the library reading a book, and I hear this weird sound like somebody stepping in snow. And I'm looking around and I feel a little pull on the back of my head. And I realize that was the sound of scissors cutting hair. And as I look back, I see Sellers holding a lock of my hair going, I got it! I got it! And she runs back off to her two ugly ass friends. And I decided that is it. I've had it. I am going to end this right now. So I went home and I did a couple of things. I said, this bitch wants a vampire for a boyfriend. Okay, I'm going to give her a real vampire to play with. So I shaved my entire head, bald, and I show up on campus the very next day looking like a modern day Count Orlok. And of course this bitch is waiting for me in front of my next class, just marinating in her stanky pussy juices. And I walk right up to her and she doesn't recognize me. And I say, hey, it's me, Edward, let's go. I'm ready to take you now. And she goes, what? And I'm reaching out and I'm grabbing her by the shoulder like, come on, let's go, baby, I'm ready. You want these piping hot prostate pollywogs in your pooper, pleasantly and presently, let's plop a drop in your vaginal slop. And it's dawning on her that this bald John Malkovich looking motherfucker is me. She's going, no, you're not my Edward. And I'm going, yes, I am your Edward, let's go. I want some of that magical vag blood, let's go. And her two friends are watching us from down the hallway. And one of them goes, you are not her Edward, and you are not my Edward, and you are not the other third girl's name who's not important enough to remember. You are not her Edward. And all three of them run off. And I thought, I got them so good. I'm so smart. No, because now I'm a bald, retarded looking asshole until my hair grows back. Nobody recognized me. Every time I tried to talk to one of my friends, they thought I was just some crazy person they never met coming up and talking to them. So I guess the moral of these stories is that ugly women need love too, but God hates them and so should you. Thanks for your time and goodbye!